But all the fat of the sea is not in the bodies of those great blubbering whales and seals. There is a fish, small in size, not larger than the smelt, that is fat beyond all description, clad in glittering silver armor and found on the coasts of British Columbia, Russian America, Queen Charlotte, and Vancouver Islands, which is called by the natives Euchalon, or candlefish. I have had both leisure and opportunity to make this fish's intimate acquaintance, played the spy upon its habits, its comings and goings, and have noted how it is caught and cured. Pictured my home, an Indian village on the north shore of British Columbia. The village is pretty, situated on a rocky point of land chosen, as all Indian villages are, with an eye to the prevention of surprise from concealed foes. Rewarded, it is guarded by a steep hill, and it commands from the fort the entrance to one of the long canals which, as I previously stated, resemble the fjords of Norway, often running 30 or 40 miles inland. The dwellings consist of 10 or 15 rude sheds, about 20 yards long and 12 wide, built of rough cedar planks, the roof of a single slant covered with poles and rushes. 6 or 8 families live in each shed. Every family has its own fire on the ground, and the smoke that must find its way out as best it can through the cracks and holes and chimneys being objected to, hangs in a dense upper cloud so that a man can only keep his head out of it by squatting on the ground. To stand up is to run a risk of suffocation. The children of all ages, in droves, naked and filthy, live under the smoke, as well as the squaws, who squat under the smoldering logs. Innumerable dogs, like starving wolves, pick-eared and sore-eyed, snappish brutes, unceasingly engaged in faction fights and sudden duels, in which the whole pack immediately takes sides. Felt, but not heard, are legions of bloodthirsty fleas that would try their best to suck blood from a boot, and by combined exertions would soon flay alive if any man with a clean and tender skin. The moon near its full creeps upwards from behind the hills. Stars one by one are lighted in the sky. Not a cloud flecks the clear blue. The Indians are busy launching their canoes, preparing war against the candlefish, which they catch when they come down to the surface to the sport in this moonlight. As the rising moon now clears the shadow of the hills, her rays slant down on the green sea, just rippled by the land breeze, and now, like a vast sheet of pearly narsh, we may see the glittering shoals of the sea fish. The water seems alive. With them out glides the dusky Indian fleet, the paddles stealthily plied by hands far too experienced to let the splash be heard. There is not a whisper, not a sound, but the measured rhythm of many paddles, as the canoes are sent flying towards the fish. To catch them, the Indians use a monster comb or rake, a piece of pine wood from 6 to 8 feet long, made round for about 2 feet of its length. At the place of the hand grip, the rest is flat, thick at the back, but thinning to a sharp edge, into which are driven teeth about 4 inches long and about an inch apart. These teeth are usually made of bone, but when the Indian fishers can get sharp-pointed iron nails, they prefer them. One Indian sits at the stern of each canoe to paddle along, keeping close to the shoal of the fish. Another, having the rounded part of the rake firmly fixed in both hands, stands with his face to the bow of the canoe, the teeth pointing up sternwards. He then sweeps it through the glittering mass of fish, using all his force, and brings it into the surface, teeth upward, usually with a fish impaled, sometimes with 3 or 4 upon one tooth. The rake being brought into the canoe, a sharp rap on the back, knocks the fish off, and then another sweep yields a similar catch. It is wonderful to see how rapidly an Indian will fill his canoe with this rude method of fishing. The dusky forms of the savages bend over the canoes, their brawny arms sweep their toothed sickles through the shoals, stroke follows stroke in swift succession, and steadily the canoes fill with their harvest of living silver. When they have heaped as much as the frail craft will carry, they paddle ashore, drag the boats up on the shelving beach, overturn them as the quickest way of discharging cargo, relaunch, and go back to rake up another load. This labor goes on until the moon has set behind the mountain peaks and the fish disappear, for it is their habit rarely to come to the surface except in the night. The sport over, we glide under the dark rocks, haul of the canoe, and lie before the log fire to sleep long and soundly. The next labor is that of the squaws, who have to do the curing, drying, and oil making. Seated in a circle, they are busy strigging the fish. They do not gut or in any other way clean them, but simply pass along the smooth sticks through their eyes, skewering on each stick as many as they will hold, and then lashing a smaller piece transversely across the ends to prevent the fish from slipping off the skewer. This done, next follows the drying, which is generally achieved in the thick smoke at the top of the sheds. The sticks of the fish being there are hung up side by side. They soon dry and acquire a flavor of wood smoke, which helps preserve them. No salt is used by the Indians in any of their systems of curing fish. When dry, the candlefish are carefully packed in large frails made from cedar bark or rushes, much like those one buys for a penny at Billingsgate. Then they are stowed away on high stages and made of poles, like a rough scaffolding. This precaution is essential, for the Indian children and dogs have an amiable weakness for eatables, and a lock and key are unknown to the Redskins. They take this way of baffling the appetites of the incorrigible pilferers. Then the bales are kept until they're required for winter. However hungry or however short of food an Indian family may be during the summertime, it seldom will break in upon the winter cache. I have never seen any fish half as fat and as good for Arctic winter food as these little candlefish. It is next to impossible to broil or fry them, for they melt completely into oil. Some idea of their marvelous fatness may be gleaned from the fact that the natives use them as lamps for lighting their lodges. The fish, when dried, has a piece of rush pith, or a strip from the inner bark of the cypress tree. Drawn through it, a long round needle made of hardwood being used for the purpose. It is then lighted and burned steadily until consumed. I have read comfortably by its light. The candlestick, literally a stick for the candle, consists of a bit of wood split at one end, with the fish inserted into the cleft. These ready-made sea candle, little dips wanting only a wick that can be added in a minute, are easily transformed by heat and pressure into liquid. When the Indian drinks, instead of burning them, he gets a fuel in the shape of oil that keeps up the combustion within him, and which is burnt and consumed in the lungs just as it was by the wick, but only gives heat. It is by no mere chance that myriads of small fish in abundance, to wondrous instinct, annually visit the northern seas, containing within themselves all the elements necessary for supplying light, heat, and life to the poor savage, who, but for this, must perish in the bitter cold of the long dreary winter. As soon as the Indians have stored away the whole supply of food for the winter, all the fish subsequently taken are converted into oil. If we stroll down to the lodges near the beach, we shall see for ourselves how they manage it. The fish reserved for oil making have been piled in heaps until partially decomposed. 5 or 6 fires are blazing away, and in each fire are a number of large round pebbles to be made very hot. By each fire are 4 large square boxes made from the trunk of the pine tree. A squaw carefully piles in each box a layer of fish about 3 deep and covers them with cold water. She then puts 5 or 6 of the hot stones upon the layers of the fish, and when the steam has carried away, carefully lays small pieces of wood over the stones. Then more fish, more water, more stones, more layers of wood, and so on until the box is filled. The oil maker now takes all the liquid from this box and uses it over again instead of water and filling another box, and skims the oil off as it floats to the surface. A vast quantity of oil is thus obtained. Often as much as 700 weight will be made by one small tribe. The refuse and fish are not yet done with, more oil being extractable from them. Built up against the pine trees is a small stage made of poles, very like a monster gridiron. The refuse of these boxes, having been sewn up in porous mats, is placed on the stage to be rolled and pressed by the arms and chests of Indian women, and the oil thus squeezed out is collected in a box placed underneath. Not only has nature, ever bountiful, set an abundance of oil into the redskins, but she provides readily made bottles to store it away in. The great sea wrack that grows to an immense size in the northern seas and forms submarine forests has a hollow stalk expanded into a complete flask at the root end. Cut into lengths of about 3 feet, these hollow stalks with the bulb at the end are collected and kept wet until required for use. As the oil is obtained, it is stored away in these natural quart bottles, or rather large bottles, where some of them hold 3 pints. Some 50 years ago, vastals of Uchelon used regularly to enter Colombia, but the silent stroke of the Indian paddle has now given place to the splashing wheels of great steamers, and now the Indian and the candlefish have vanished altogether. From the same causes, the Uchelon has also disappeared from Puget Sound, and is now seldom caught south of latitude 50 degrees north.